I really love Craigslist. I estimate I've met maybe 300 people for buying and selling stuff, and for the most part, everyone was nice and harmless. However, I did run into a creep who made me rethink meeting strangers alone to sell stuff. For your information, I was an early 20s female at the time. It's 2009, and I'm staying with my parents for the Christmas holidays in a small town in Florida. I'm going through my childhood room and cleaning out the closet and find a giant CD holder full of maybe 100 really shitty CDs. Think Nickelback or Aqua. It's the 21st century, no one uses CDs anymore. I figure I try to sell the CDs on Craigslist. I put up a listing, 100 CDs from the late 90s and early to mid 2000s, mix of pop and rock, all for $35 OBA. The next day, I get an email from a guy named John around 2 p.m. He says that he's in town temporarily and that he wants the CDs. He says he can pick them up after dinner around 8 p.m. I email him back my address and number and tell him to text or call when he's on his way. 8 p.m. comes and goes. I figure I've been stood up, which happens often on Craigslist. No big deal. My dad works for a liquor distribution company and would often do demonstration nights at restaurants and bars, and would come home at bar closing time. This night he gets home at around 3 a.m. I'm in college and a total night owl, so I'm still probably up eating junk food, surfing the web, and watching horror flicks. I hear a car pull up. I look out the window and see him sitting in his car eating food. He often stops at Taco Bell on his way home and eats it in his car so my mom doesn't know he's cheating on his diet. Maybe 10 minutes later, my dad comes in and shouts my name.
Pizza succubus, there's someone here to see you. Can you please tell me why a strange man is showing up at our house at 3 a.m.?
I go downstairs and my dad says some guy pulled up into the driveway and asked for me by my name. I walk outside with my dad, and this guy, who is maybe mid-30s, gets out of his car. He says he's the Craigslist guy who wanted to buy my CDs. My dad goes back into the house. I tell the guy it's really late to just be stopping by, especially without texting first. However, since I'm awake, I go and grab the CDs. He then proceeds to drone on and on about why he's buying the CDs. He says he's engaged to a woman he loves very much, and all he wants to do is make her happy. He said that last week someone broke into her car and stole all of her CDs. She was really upset, and he wanted to make it up to her. He looked on Craigslist and found my listing and was really excited because I had a bunch of CDs she used to have. Weird thing is, I didn't list any of the artists or bands because I was lazy, but I didn't think about that at the time. Anyway, he said he was getting it for her as a Christmas surprise. He said he was staying with his future in-laws somewhere nearby, and that their family barbecue ran really late, which is why he never made it at 8 p.m. By this point, I had lost interest and said something along the lines of, "That's sweet, but next time you should probably call or text the Craigslister instead of just showing up." I hand him the CDs, he hands me the cash, and I go back inside. 3 days later, I start getting texts from an unknown number.
Hey, I don't know my way around this town. Care to tour guide? I could really use a massage. Where can I get a massage in this town? You're Asian. Do you do massage? Would you take $40 for a 1-hour massage? Happy ending?
I finally respond back.
Who the fuck is this?
He says,
Oh, sorry, I bought the CDs from you the other day. Do you squirt?
I didn't respond, obviously. I show my friends the text that night, and we laugh it off. Then the next day I get more texts.
I still have your address. I'm at the Bank of America near your neighborhood. I just got the $40, babe. Only 3 minutes away. Are you home? You fucking bitch, stop ignoring me. I'm almost there.
I immediately ran downstairs to tell my dad and mom. It was nighttime, so we shut off all the lights outside and inside my house. My mom, little brother, and I went in my parents' room in the back of the house. My dad hid behind the curtains of the front bay window with a shovel in his hand. A few minutes later, I heard him run down the front hallway, fling the front door open, and run outside. We heard some faint shouting, so we all walked out of the bedroom. By that time, my dad came back in with his shovel, his face red and his hair all disheveled. Apparently the guy came driving down our street really slowly. My dad recognized the car and went running outside with the shovel, yelling obscenities at the guy. The guy peeled off and never came back or texted me again. Since then, I've bought and sold stuff on Craigslist, but I always make sure to meet people at a public place. I also stalk people's email addresses and Google accounts and etc. I needed a new roommate quickly and eventually settled on this chick from Florida who was moving out to San Diego. She initially came off as a little goofy and naive over the phone, but in person she was just strange. She had no sense of personal boundaries, would eat all of my food, use my laptop in my room when I wasn't home to go on plentyoffish.com, and would barge into my room when I had friends over to say the weirdest shit, all in the first week. She did and said a ton of weird things in the months she lived with me. She started hanging out with a coworker from Subway along with her coworker's boyfriend, who just got out of jail, and 4 of his friends. They really only came around because she would buy stuff and they laughed at the dumb shit she would do and say. She would always leave the window cracked because she lost her keys a lot. Anyways, her friends broke into the house, stole my TV, my laptop, the smaller TV I had in my room, this wedding dress my aunt wanted me to sell on eBay for her, a bunch of DVDs, and my prescription glasses. I called her freaking out and she was just getting home and she said she had called the cops on me because her broken laptop got stolen and suggested I took all of my stuff out of the apartment to steal her crappy broken laptop. Cops came and pulled me aside and told me she seemed unstable and suggested I don't use Craigslist for roommates anymore. I had her backed against the wall and was screaming at her with my finger in her face when the cops walked in. I thought I was screwed when they saw that, but after talking to her for 5 minutes, they seemed to understand my frustration with her. The cops just took down what was stolen, and I took her key away and put her box of crap outside the apartment. I eventually got my stuff back on my own because I made up some bullshit about having hidden cameras and I wouldn't show them to the cops if I got all my stuff back. Somehow that worked. Moral of the story is, I found a roommate on Craigslist who was dumb and naive and her friends ended up robbing my place. She instead called the cops on me. I had an entertainment center advertised and a woman asked to come over to have a look at it. We set up a time and when the time came she didn't show up. I texted her and a couple hours later she replied and asked if it was too late to come by. It was 10 p.m. but I said okay. She said she would be there in 10 minutes but wasn't there 20 minutes later and I texted her again. 10 more minutes she said, but she hadn't shown up by 11 p.m. So I texted again and said we would have to do it another day. And she replied that she was just pulling up. I go to my front door and sure enough, she's pulling into the driveway and there are about 4 or 5 other people in the car with her. They all get out and start walking towards the door and I ask them what they're doing and the woman says they all want to see the entertainment center. I told her that only she could come in and at that point I wasn't sure I even wanted her to come in. She says she needs at least one other person's opinion. I say no. She gets indignant and I ask her to leave. And she says that I'm not being a very good Christian. I say I'm fine with that and went into my house and locked all the doors while peeking out the window. One of the dudes who was with her is pissing at the end of my driveway, but then they get in the car and drive away. The whole thing was super bizarre.